Maya Chen stepped through the automatic doors of Jefferson High School, her worn military boots making soft sounds against the polished linoleum floor. The hallway buzzed with typical teenage energy, students laughing, lockers slamming, and the distant sound of a basketball bouncing in the gymnasium. She paused, adjusting the strap of her simple backpack, and took a deep breath. At 17, Maya looked like any other student, average height, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing jeans and a plain gray sweater. But her eyes held something different, a depth that spoke of experiences far beyond her years. When she moved, there was a controlled precision to her steps, a quiet awareness of her surroundings that most teenagers never developed. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, approached with a warm smile. "Maya, welcome to Jefferson High. I'm so glad your family decided to settle here in Cedar Falls. How are you feeling about starting your senior year?" "Grateful for the opportunity, ma'am," Maya replied politely. Her voice was steady, respectful, but there was something formal about the way she spoke that made Mrs. Rodriguez pause for just a moment. "Well, let's get you to the office and sort out your schedule. I think you'll find our school has excellent programs." Mrs. Rodriguez began walking, chattering about academic offerings, sports teams, and college preparation programs. Maya listened attentively, filing away every detail. In the guidance counselor's office, Mr. Thompson reviewed Maya's transcript with growing amazement. "These are remarkable grades, especially considering—" He glanced up at her. "Your file mentions you were homeschooled for several years due to family circumstances." "Yes, sir. My parents traveled extensively for work. International consulting." The lie came easily, practiced and smooth. Maya had spent months preparing this cover story with her handler before being placed in the witness protection program. What the school records didn't show was that Maya had spent the last 4 years not traveling with consulting parents, but fighting alongside human resistance fighters on the planet Kepler 442b. She had been part of the war that saved not just that colony world, but potentially the entire human expansion into space. The consulting work had actually been her parents' roles as military engineers, and Maya had been evacuated from Earth as a 13-year-old when the Dominion Empire first made contact. The Dominion had expected humans to be easy prey, a young species, technologically inferior, scattered across only a few dozen worlds. They had been very wrong. "Your science and mathematics scores are exceptional," Mr. Thompson continued, flipping through pages. "And these language skills. You're fluent in Mandarin, Spanish, and what's this other one? The transcript just says synthetic language study." "Computer programming languages," Maya answered quickly. "My parents thought it would be useful for college applications." Another lie. The synthetic language was actually Dominion Standard, which she'd learned during her time as a prisoner of war before the Great Escape from their mining facility on Titan 7. As Mr. Thompson assigned her locker and printed her schedule, Maya's enhanced hearing picked up conversations from the hallway. Students complaining about pop quizzes, discussing weekend plans, arguing about which movie to see. Such normal, peaceful concerns. She had almost forgotten what normal sounded like. Her first class was advanced chemistry with Dr. Patel. As Maya entered the classroom, conversations died down. New students always drew attention, but there was something about Maya that made people look twice without knowing why. She chose a seat in the back corner. Force of habit. Always keep your back to a wall. Always know your exits. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. Maya Chen, would you like to introduce yourself?" Maya stood smoothly. "I'm Maya. My family just moved here from overseas. I'm looking forward to learning with all of you." She sat back down, ignoring the curious stares and whispered conversations. Dr. Patel launched into a lesson about molecular bonding. Maya found herself both engaged and frustrated. The chemistry being taught was accurate but so basic compared to what she'd learned about Dominion plasma, technology and the molecular engineering required to create the weapons that had turned the tide of the war. During the lesson, a student named Tyler raised his hand. "Dr. Patel, is it true that scientists think we might find alien life someday? Like intelligent aliens?" Dr. Patel smiled. "That's certainly possible, Tyler. The universe is vast, and statistically speaking, there's likely intelligent life out there somewhere. Though whether we'll make contact in our lifetimes is another question entirely." Maya's hand clenched slightly around her pencil. If only they knew that first contact had already happened. That humanity had fought a brutal 4-year war against an empire that spanned dozens of star systems. The teenagers like herself had learned to pilot stolen Dominion fighters and had helped coordinate resistance cells across 3 different worlds. The bell rang, and students began filing out. Maya gathered her things, but Dr. Patel called her over. "Maya, I noticed you seemed very engaged during today's lesson. Have you done much chemistry work before?" "Some independent study," Maya replied carefully. "I find it interesting how different elements interact under various conditions." "Well, if you're interested in more advanced topics, I run a science club that meets after school on Fridays. We discuss current research, sometimes do extra experiments. You might enjoy it." Maya nodded politely. "I'll consider it, thank you." As she left the classroom, Maya wondered how she would explain to Dr. Patel that she'd already seen elements interact under the extreme conditions of space combat, had watched human engineers reverse engineer Dominion technology to create shields that could withstand plasma bombardments, and had personally helped calibrate the targeting systems that had destroyed the Dominion's primary command ship. Her next class was American History with Mr. Barnes. As Maya took her seat, she realized the irony of learning about past human conflicts when she'd just lived through what would probably be remembered as the most important war in human history, if the public ever learned about it. The morning passed in a blur of classes, introductions, and carefully crafted responses to innocent questions. Maya found herself walking a constant tightrope between appearing normal and not revealing the truth about her experiences. When a classmate complained about their parents being overprotective, Maya had to bite her tongue to keep from mentioning that she'd been making life-and-death decisions since she was 14. During lunch, she sat alone, observing the social dynamics of the cafeteria. Groups of friends laughing together, couples holding hands, students stressing about upcoming tests. It was everything she'd fought to protect, everything the resistance had died for. The simple right of human children to grow up safely, to worry about normal things like grades and relationships instead of plasma burns and food rationing. But watching it all, Maya felt more isolated than she had even during the darkest days of the war. At least then, she'd been surrounded by people who understood what she'd been through. Here, she was completely alone with secrets that could never be shared. 2 weeks into her time at Jefferson High, Maya had settled into what others saw as a normal routine. She attended classes, completed assignments with perfect scores, and politely declined most social invitations. But beneath the surface, she was constantly fighting battles her classmates couldn't imagine. The first real challenge came during physical education class. Coach Martinez had decided to start the semester with fitness testing, push-ups, sit-ups, mile runs, and agility exercises. Maya knew she needed to be careful. Too much performance would draw unwanted attention, but too little might seem suspicious given her obvious good health. "All right. Chen, you're up for the mile run," Coach Martinez called out, checking his stopwatch. Maya took her position at the starting line alongside 3 other students. She had calculated exactly how fast she needed to run to place respectably without standing out. Around 7.5 minutes would be good for a teenage girl. The whistle blew, and Maya began jogging. Within the first 100 meters, she was already fighting every instinct her body had learned. During the war, running had meant survival. Slow meant dead. Her enhanced cardiovascular system, developed through years of high-gravity training in combat situations, wanted to push her far beyond normal human limits. She deliberately slowed her breathing, shortened her stride, and forced herself to look slightly winded. Around the track, other students were already breathing hard, some walking. Maya maintained her careful pace, crossing the finish line in exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds. "Nice job, Chen," Coach Martinez noted on his clipboard. "That's a solid time. You ever think about joining track team?" "Thank you, but I prefer individual exercise," Maya replied, still pretending to catch her breath. In reality, she felt like she'd barely started warming up. During the war, she'd once run 12 miles through the crystal forests of Kepler 442b, while carrying 40 pounds of stolen Dominion equipment, all while being pursued by their hunter drones. Later that day in advanced physics, Mr. Watson was explaining Newton's laws of motion when a student named Jessica raised her hand. "Mr. Watson, what would happen if you were in space and something hit your ship? Like, would you feel it the same way?" Maya's hands tightened around her pencil as unwanted memories surfaced. She could still feel the jarring impact of Dominion plasma cannons striking the hull of the resistance ship Freedom's Hope. The way the artificial gravity would fluctuate, sending people and equipment flying. The sound of metal buckling under extreme forces. Well, Mr. Watson continued, in space you definitely feel the impact. But the experience would be quite different from what we're used to here on Earth. Maya found herself mentally correcting his explanations. Mr. Watson was describing theoretical physics. Maya had lived through the practical reality of space combat. She knew how disorienting it was when your ship's orientation changed suddenly in three-dimensional space. She'd experienced the sickening sensation of emergency deceleration when your pilot had to avoid incoming fire. During lunch, Maya sat in her usual spot, quietly eating while observing her classmates. At the table next to her, a group of students was engaged in animated discussion about a popular science fiction movie. The space battles were so unrealistic, complained a boy named Marcus. I mean, there's no sound in space and those fighter ships were moving way too slow. His friend Jake nodded. Yeah, and the weapons were totally fake-looking. I bet real space weapons would be way different. Maya almost choked on her sandwich. She'd personally fired Dominion plasma rifles and had operated the targeting systems on captured enemy fighters. The movie weapons were actually remarkably similar to real Dominion technology, though human engineers had significantly improved the power efficiency. What do you think, Maya? Jessica had noticed her listening. You always seem to know stuff about science. Do you think space battles would really be like in the movies? Maya carefully swallowed her food, buying time to formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much. I think the reality would probably be much more complicated than movies make it seem. More technical, more terrifying. Terrifying how? Marcus asked, leaning forward with interest. Maya thought about watching friends die in the vacuum of space, about the horrifying silence when communication systems failed during combat, about the way Dominion weapons could cut through ship hulls like they were paper. Just the scale of it, I think. The distances involved, the physics, it would all be very unforgiving of mistakes. The conversation moved on, but Maya noticed that Jessica continued to watch her thoughtfully. After school, Maya walked home through the quiet suburban streets of Cedar Falls. The normalcy of it all still felt surreal. Neat houses with perfect lawns, children playing in parks, elderly couples walking their dogs. No plasma scorch marks on buildings, no rubble from bombardments, no emergency shelters or rationing centers. At home, Maya went through the motions of being a typical teenager. She did homework at the kitchen table while her Aunt Sarah, actually her assigned handler from the Witness Protection Program, prepared dinner. Sarah looked the part of a middle-aged single woman who'd taken in her orphan niece, but Maya knew she was actually a former military intelligence officer. How was school today? Sarah asked, the same question she asked every day. Fine, Maya replied, the same answer she gave every day. But tonight she added, some of the students were talking about science fiction movies, about space battles. Sarah's chopping motion paused for just a moment. Oh, what did you think about that? It made me realize how little people here understand about what's really out there. Maya set down her pencil and looked out the window at the peaceful evening sky. Sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing, keeping the truth hidden. Sarah sat down across from her. Maya, we've talked about this. The government panel made the decision that public knowledge of the Dominion War would cause mass panic. The integration process needs to happen gradually. But these people have no idea how close they came to losing everything, Maya said quietly. They don't know that teenagers like them fought and died to keep Earth free. They think space exploration is still theoretical. And because of that ignorance, they can live normal lives, Sarah pointed out. They can worry about homework and dating and college applications instead of plasma burns and combat tactics. Isn't that what you fought for? Maya nodded reluctantly. Sarah was right, of course, but the isolation was becoming harder to bear. She was surrounded by people her own age, but she might as well have been from a different planet. In many ways, she supposed she was. That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Through her window, she could see stars that most people thought were just distant points of light. But Maya knew which ones had human colonies now. She knew which systems had been battlefields. She could identify the constellation where the final battle had taken place. where human ingenuity and determination had finally broken the Dominion's will to continue the war. Her enhanced hearing picked up the normal sounds of suburban nighttime. Air conditioners humming. Distant traffic, a dog barking somewhere. No plasma fire, no ship engines, no emergency alarms. Just peace. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this peace was fragile. The Dominion had retreated, not surrendered. Their empire was vast, and humans had only encountered one small frontier section of it. Somewhere out there, in star systems humanity hadn't even discovered yet, the real Dominion military was probably analyzing what had happened and planning their next move. Maya closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with memories of war and worries about a future her classmates couldn't imagine. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning in advanced chemistry. Dr. Patel was demonstrating a reaction involving hydrogen peroxide when the solution suddenly began producing far more gas than expected. What should have been a controlled demonstration turned into a rapidly expanding foam that began overflowing the beaker. Everyone stepped back, Dr. Patel called out, but Maya could see he was fighting panic. The reaction was accelerating beyond his control, and the expanding chemical foam was releasing fumes that were making students cough and their eyes water. While Dr. Patel fumbled for the emergency shutoff procedures, Maya's combat-trained mind assessed the situation in seconds. The reaction had been contaminated, probably by residue from a previous experiment. The chemical mixture was creating a toxic gas buildup that would soon reach dangerous levels in the enclosed classroom. Without thinking, Maya moved. She grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher, checked the chemical type in a glance, and began spraying CO2 directly into the reaction. The carbon dioxide displaced the oxygen, stopping the reaction almost immediately. Then she moved to the windows, opening them in a specific pattern to create cross-ventilation that would clear the toxic fumes most efficiently. "Everyone out. In an orderly line," she called out, her voice carrying an authority that made students immediately comply. She positioned herself near the door, mentally counting heads as they filed out, making sure no one was left behind. The entire crisis was over in less than 3 minutes. Students gathered in the hallway, coughing slightly but unharmed. Dr. Patel stared at Maya with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. "Maya, that was... How did you know to do that? Those aren't procedures we've covered in class." Maya felt every eye in the hallway focused on her. Her heart was racing, not from the chemical emergency, but from the realization that she'd just blown her cover in the most public way possible. Her training had taken over completely, and now she had to explain actions that no normal teenager should have been capable of. I read a lot," she said weakly. "Emergency response procedures. I guess I just remembered something I read online." Jessica stepped forward from the group of students. She'd been watching Maya carefully for weeks, and now her expression was openly suspicious. "Maya, you moved like you'd done that before. Like professionally. And your voice. You sounded like you were giving military orders." The other students began murmuring among themselves. Marcus nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it was like watching a soldier or something. No offense, but that wasn't normal." Dr. Patel held up his hand for quiet. Regardless of where Maya learned those procedures, she prevented what could have been a serious injury situation. "The school administration will want to review this incident. But right now I'm just grateful everyone is safe." As the students were dismissed to the library while maintenance cleaned the chemistry room, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates asking questions she couldn't answer truthfully. "Where did you really live before coming here?" Tyler asked. "Because I've never seen anyone move that fast except in movies." "Have you ever been in an emergency before?" Jessica pressed. "You weren't scared at all. Most people freeze up, but you just took charge." Maya mumbled something about emergency preparedness classes and tried to escape to the bathroom, but she could feel the weight of their stares and hear their continued speculation. Her carefully constructed normal life was unraveling. At lunch, instead of eating alone, Maya found Jessica approaching her table with a determined expression. "Mind if I sit?" Jessica asked, but she was already settling into the chair across from Maya. "We need to talk." "About what?" Maya tried to keep her voice neutral. "About who you really are," Jessica said bluntly. "I've been watching you for 3 weeks now. You don't act like any teenager I've ever met. You move differently. You notice things other people miss, and what happened in chemistry class. That wasn't something you learned from reading online." Maya's training told her to deflect, to make excuses, to maintain the cover story at all costs. But looking at Jessica's intelligent, determined face, she felt a sudden exhaustion with all the lies. "I can't tell you what you want to know," Maya said quietly. "Can't or won't? Both." Maya took a bite of her sandwich, hoping Jessica would give up and leave. Instead, Jessica leaned forward. "My dad's in the military, Air Force, and he's been acting weird for the past few months. Really weird. Like something big happened that he can't talk about. He gets these looks sometimes like he's seen things that keep him awake at night." Maya's chewing slowed. "What kind of looks?" "The same kind you get sometimes," Jessica said softly. "Especially when people talk about space or science fiction movies or anything related to, I don't know, bigger things than high school drama." The two girls stared at each other across the lunch table. Maya could see intelligence in Jessica's eyes, along with genuine concern rather than just curiosity. She was clearly her father's daughter. "Your dad ever mention anything about his work?" Maya asked carefully. "Not really. But he's been having nightmares. And sometimes he'll just stop what he's doing and stare at the sky, like he's expecting something to appear up there." Jessica paused. "Maya, is there something we should be worried about? Something the adults aren't telling us?" Before Maya could answer, Marcus and Tyler approached their table. "Mind if we join this conspiracy theory meeting?" Marcus asked with a grin, but Maya could see he was only half joking. "We've been talking," Tyler said as they sat down, "about how you handled the chemistry thing, but also about other stuff. Like how you never seem surprised by anything. How you know things that aren't in our textbooks. How you watch the sky sometimes like you're looking for something." Maya realized that her attempts to blend in had actually made her more noticeable to the observant students. They might not know what was different about her, but they definitely knew something was. "Look," she said finally, "I appreciate that you're curious, but there are some things I just can't discuss. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm not allowed to." "Not allowed by who?" Jessica asked. Maya hesitated. How much could she reveal without compromising everything? How much did these teenagers deserve to know about the reality of their universe? "By people who think you're safer not knowing," she said at last. The four students sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that statement settling over them. "But you think differently?" Marcus asked quietly. Maya looked around the cafeteria at all the students going about their normal lives, worrying about normal things. She thought about her classmates who had died in the war, teenagers who'd never gotten the chance to go to high school, to complain about homework, to fall in love, I think. She said slowly, "That ignorance is only protection if the danger stays far away. And I'm not sure it will." That afternoon, Maya found herself called to the principal's office. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, along with a man in a suit who introduced himself as Agent Williams from Educational Oversight. Maya recognized the type immediately. Government handler, probably here to assess whether her cover had been compromised. "Maya," Mrs. Rodriguez began, "Dr. Patel has given us a very positive report about your quick thinking during today's emergency. However, some questions have been raised about your background preparation for such situations." Agent Williams leaned forward. "We'd like to review your educational history once more, particularly regarding any specialized training you might have received." Maya knew this was a test. They were giving her a chance to reinforce her cover story, or to signal that she needed extraction from the school. She thought about Jessica's questions, about her father's nightmares, about teenagers who deserved to know their universe was bigger and more dangerous than they'd been told. "I think," Maya said carefully, "that my background may need some clarification. But perhaps that conversation should involve more people who are asking the right questions." Agent Williams raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Rodriguez looked confused, but Maya had made her decision. The truth, at least some of it, was going to come out. The only question now was how much control she would have over that process. The meeting took place 3 days later in the school's conference room after hours. Maya sat at one end of the long table, facing a group that would have seemed impossible just a week ago. Mrs. Rodriguez, Agent Williams, Jessica and her father, Colonel Davis, still in his Air Force uniform, Marcus, Tyler, Dr. Patel, and surprisingly, 2 other students, Sarah Kim from her calculus class and David Martinez, the senior class president. Agent Williams looked deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation. "I want to state for the record that this disclosure goes against established protocol and my strong recommendations." Colonel Davis, a stern man with graying hair and tired eyes, spoke up. Protocol designed to protect a secret that's getting harder to keep every day. My daughter has been asking questions I can't answer, and apparently she's not the only teenager who's noticed that something's not right with the world. Maya studied the faces around the table. These students had been carefully vetted over the past 3 days. All had demonstrated unusual observational skills, had asked pointed questions about recent world events, and had family members with security clearances who could verify their trustworthiness. Mrs. Rodriguez cleared her throat nervously. I'm still not entirely sure what this meeting is about, but I've been assured it relates to Maya's educational background and some concerns about student safety. It does, Maya said quietly. But probably not in the way you think. She took a deep breath. My name is Maya Chen. I'm 17 years old, and 4 months ago I was fighting in a war that officially never happened. The room fell silent. Jessica leaned forward, her eyes wide but not entirely surprised. Fighting who? An alien empire called the Dominion. They made first contact with humanity 4 years ago, and it wasn't peaceful. Maya's voice was steady, but she could feel her hands trembling slightly. After months of lies and careful deflections, the truth felt strange on her tongue. David Martinez laughed nervously. This is a joke, right? Like an elaborate prank or something? Colonel Davis shook his head grimly. Son, I wish it was. Maya's telling the truth. I was part of the military response coordination from Earth. What she and thousands of other young people went through. He paused, struggling with his own memories. It was hell. Dr. Patel looked back and forth between them. Are you telling me that there has been an actual war with aliens and the public doesn't know about it? Agent Williams sighed heavily. The decision was made at the highest levels that public knowledge of the Dominion War would cause mass panic, economic collapse, and social breakdown. The integration of returned veterans like Maya into normal society was deemed necessary for both their psychological health and public security. Maya continued. The Dominion expected humans to surrender immediately when they demonstrated their technological superiority. They were wrong. We adapted their technology, we learned their tactics, and we proved that human determination and ingenuity could overcome their advantages. Sarah Kim, who had been silent until now, spoke up. That's why there have been all those technological breakthroughs in the news lately. New battery technology, improved satellite systems, advances in materials science. They're not really new, are they? No, Maya confirmed. They're reverse-engineered Dominion technology, being slowly released to the public to avoid economic disruption. Marcus was staring at Maya with a mixture of awe and disbelief. You're serious? You actually fought aliens? In space? On colony worlds, mostly. I was evacuated from Earth when I was 13, after my parents were killed in the first bombardment of the lunar research stations. I spent 4 years with the Resistance on Kepler 442b and other worlds. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. How many people died? Maya closed her eyes for a moment. The official casualty reports are classified, but millions, entire colonies were lost. Earth itself was never directly attacked after the lunar strikes, but the outer world, she opened her eyes. That's why I can't just sit here and pretend to be a normal teenager. Because normal teenagers shouldn't have to live through what I lived through. Mrs. Rodriguez had gone very pale. But the war is over now? We're safe? Colonel Davis and Maya exchanged a look. The Dominion retreated, the colonel said carefully. But their empire spans dozens of star systems. What we fought was essentially a frontier patrol force. The main Dominion military is still out there. And they know about us now, Maya added. They know that humans won't surrender easily, that we can adapt their technology, that we're more dangerous than they initially calculated. The question isn't whether they'll come back, but when, and in what force. Jessica had been listening intently, her journalist instincts clearly engaged. So what happens now? Do we just go back to pretending we don't know any of this? Agent Williams started to respond, but Maya cut him off. That's exactly the problem. The adult world wants to pretend this never happened, that we can go back to normal, but we can't. Every day we wait, every day we keep the truth hidden is a day we're not preparing for what's coming. Dr. Patel leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. This explains so much about your performance in chemistry class. You weren't learning basic molecular theory. You already understood advanced applications. I had to learn fast, Maya said simply. When you're trying to jury-rig life support systems with salvaged alien components, you pick up a lot of practical chemistry. David Martinez had been quiet, but now he spoke up with the natural leadership that had made him class president. Okay, assuming this is all true, and honestly it explains a lot of weird things I've noticed lately, what are you asking us to do? What's the point of telling us? Maya looked around the table at these teenagers who had just had their understanding of reality completely overturned. I'm asking you to help me figure out how to prepare our generation for what's coming. The adults want to keep us ignorant and safe, but ignorance won't protect us when the Dominion returns with a real invasion force. You want to train other students? Sarah asked. I want to start a program that looks like normal extracurricular activities but actually teaches practical skills. Engineering, emergency response, advanced science, critical thinking. Skills that could make the difference between survival and extinction if this planet ever comes under attack. Colonel Davis nodded slowly. An accelerated education program disguised as academic enrichment. It could work. Agent Williams shook his head.
This is exactly what we were trying to avoid.
You're talking about militarizing children. No, Maya said firmly. I'm talking about educating them, about giving them the tools they need to protect themselves and their families, about trusting them with the truth instead of treating them like children who can't handle reality. Tyler raised his hand tentatively.
Can I ask?
What was it like? The fighting, I mean. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Terrifying, exhausting, but also, it showed me what humans are capable of when we have to be. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest or the most advanced, but we're adaptable in ways that other species aren't. We can learn anything, survive anything, overcome anything if we have to. She looked directly at Tyler. That's what I want people to understand. We're not helpless. We're not defenseless. We just need to remember what we're capable of. Mrs. Rodriguez finally spoke up. What would this program look like? How would we explain it to parents, to the school board? Maya smiled for the first time since the meeting began. We call it the Advanced Preparedness and Leadership Program. College preparation for students interested in careers in science, engineering, and emergency services. We teach real skills disguised as academic exercises. Jessica grinned. And if anyone asks why a 17-year-old is helping design the curriculum, we tell them I tested out of several grade levels and have extensive experience with independent study, Maya replied. All of which is technically true, Colonel Davis chuckled. You're definitely your parents' daughter. They would have been proud of what you're trying to do. As the meeting broke up, the students clustered around Maya, asking dozens of questions about the war, about alien technology, about what it was like to live on other worlds. For the first time since arriving at Jefferson High, Maya felt like she was talking to people who understood, or at least were trying to understand what she'd been through. Agent Williams approached her as the others were leaving. You realize this changes everything. Once this information starts spreading, there's no controlling it. Maya nodded. Good. It's time people knew what universe they're living in. 6 weeks after the conference room meeting, Jefferson High School had quietly become the testing ground for the most unusual educational program in human history. The Advanced Preparedness and Leadership Program had attracted 47 students, all carefully screened and all sworn to secrecy until the program could be properly evaluated. Maya stood in what used to be the school's unused computer lab, now converted into something that looked like a cross between a science classroom and a military command center. Students worked in small groups at stations that taught everything from basic electronics to emergency medical procedures, from advanced mathematics to practical engineering problem solving. Maya, I need help with this circuit, called out Jennifer Walsh, a sophomore who had joined the program after her older brother noticed her asking pointed questions about recent technology announcements. She was working on what appeared to be a simple electronics project, but was actually a simplified version of Dominion communication technology. Maya moved over to Jennifer's station. What's the problem? The signal keeps degrading when I try to boost the range. In the theoretical models, this frequency should maintain coherence over much longer distances. Maya smiled. Jennifer was naturally gifted with technology, picking up concepts that had taken Maya months to master during the war. Try adjusting the harmonic resonance. Dominion comm systems work on principles that are counterintuitive to human engineering. She caught herself and looked around, but none of the uninitiated students were close enough to hear. The program maintained careful layers of secrecy. New students started with advanced but seemingly normal academic work. Only after proving their trustworthiness and capability were they gradually introduced to the truth about the source of their curriculum. Across the room, Marcus was leading a group through what looked like an advanced physics simulation on their computers. In reality, they were learning to calculate orbital mechanics for spacecraft, maneuvering, skills that might be crucial if Earth ever needed to coordinate defense, satellites or evacuation ships. Dr. Patel entered the classroom carrying a box of what appeared to be chemistry supplies. "Maya, the new materials you requested have arrived." Maya opened the box and carefully examined the contents. To anyone watching, they looked like standard laboratory chemicals. But several of the compounds were synthetic materials reverse-engineered from Dominion technology, substances that could be used to create emergency power, sources, or improvised communication devices. "Perfect," Maya said. "We can start the Advanced Materials Science module next week." The door opened, and Jessica entered with two people Maya didn't recognize, a middle-aged woman in a business suit and a young man who looked like he was in his early 20s. "Maya," Jessica called out, "I'd like you to meet some people. This is Dr. Sarah Henderson from the Department of Education, and this is Alex Rodriguez. Well, maybe he should explain himself." The young man stepped forward with a slight smile. "I'm Alex Rodriguez, and until 8 months ago I was a communications specialist with the Human Colonial Defense Force on Titan 7. Maya's breath caught. Titan 7 had been one of the most brutal battlefields of the war. The mining facilities there had been converted into prisoner-of-war camps before the Great Escape that Maya had helped coordinate. "You were at Titan 7? Maya asked quietly. Alex nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "I was captured during the third wave assault and spent 14 months in the mining complex before the resistance operation freed us." He paused. "I heard about a teenage engineer who helped design the communication systems that made the escape possible. Someone who spoke fluent Dominion Standard and could interface directly with their computer networks." Maya felt the attention of everyone in the room focusing on her. Most of the students in the program knew she had combat experience, but few knew the specific details of her service record. "That was you, wasn't it?" Alex continued. "The ghost in their systems. The one who convinced the Dominion guards that there was a massive system malfunction while 300 prisoners walked out the front door." Maya looked around the room at the faces of her students and fellow teachers. "Yes," she said simply. "That was me." Dr. Henderson had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement. "I came here today to evaluate an experimental academic program. I'm beginning to think I've stumbled into something much more significant." David Martinez, who had become Maya's unofficial assistant in running the program, spoke up. "Dr. Henderson, what you're seeing here is the future of human education. These students are learning advanced concepts years ahead of the normal curriculum because they need to be ready for a world that's more complex and dangerous than previous generations realized." "But what authority does this program have?" Dr. Henderson asked. "What accreditation? What oversight?" Before Maya could answer, Colonel Davis entered the classroom accompanied by Agent Williams and two other people in military uniforms. The conversation immediately stopped. "Dr. Henderson," Colonel Davis said, "I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss the formal authorization for this program." One of the military officers, a woman with general's stars on her uniform, stepped forward. "I'm General Patricia Morrison, Joint Chiefs of Staff. As of today, the Advanced Preparedness and Leadership Program is being recognized as a pilot initiative under the Department of Defense Education Partnership." Maya stared in shock. "Ma'am?" General Morrison smiled. "Ms. Chen, your service record during the Dominion War is exemplary. Your innovations in cross-species technology integration and your leadership during multiple combat situations have earned you a level of credibility that most people twice your age would envy." She paused. "The Joint Chiefs have been watching this program for weeks, and we're impressed with both the curriculum design and the results you're achieving." Dr. Henderson looked between Maya and the general. "Are you telling me that this teenage girl has been designing educational curriculum that meets Department of Defense standards?" "I'm telling you," General Morrison replied, "that this teenage girl has combat experience and technological knowledge that exceed most of our professional military educators. And she's using that experience to prepare the next generation for challenges that the civilian world isn't even aware of yet. Alex Rodriguez raised his hand tentatively. General Morrison, does this mean the government is reconsidering the secrecy protocols around the Dominion War? General Morrison's expression became more serious. The secrecy protocols remain in place for now, but we're acknowledging that selective disclosure to properly vetted individuals may be necessary for national security purposes. She looked directly at Maya. We're not ready for full public disclosure, but we need programs like this one to ensure that key personnel are properly prepared. Maya felt a mixture of relief and responsibility. What does this mean for the students? For the program? It means, Agent Williams said, looking somewhat relieved himself, that you're no longer operating outside official channels. You have legitimate authorization to teach advanced concepts to properly cleared students. Tyler raised his hand from across the room. Does this mean we can recruit more students? There are a lot of people who should be in this program. Maya looked to General Morrison, who nodded. Careful expansion is authorized, but continued security screening is essential. Dr. Henderson was still processing everything she'd heard. I need to understand exactly what these students are learning. What kind of advanced concepts are we talking about? Maya gestured around the room. Basic principles of energy manipulation that lead to understanding advanced power systems. Communication theory that prepares them for non-standard signal processing. Materials science that includes properties of synthetic compounds. Engineering problem solving that emphasizes adaptability and improvisation. And the practical applications? Dr. Henderson pressed. Jennifer Walsh looked up from her electronics project. We're learning how to build things that can work in extreme conditions. How to repair systems we've never seen before. How to communicate when normal methods fail. She paused. How to survive when the world changes in ways we can't predict. Sarah Kim added, we're learning to think like engineers and scientists, but also like survivors. Like people who might have to rebuild civilization from scratch if necessary. General Morrison nodded approvingly. These students understand that the comfortable world their parents grew up in may not be the world they inherit. They're preparing themselves to be leaders and innovators regardless of what challenges arise. Maya looked around the room at her students, her fellow veterans, the government officials, and the educators who had become part of this unlikely experiment. The truth is, she said, we don't know when the Dominion will return or in what force. We don't know what other challenges humanity might face as we expand into space. But we know that ignorance and unpreparedness are not viable options. Dr. Henderson was quiet for a long moment, then asked, what do you need from the Department of Education to make this program succeed? 3 months after receiving official authorization, Maya's program had expanded to 12 schools across the country. She now spent her days traveling between campuses, training teachers, and evaluating students who showed the particular combination of intelligence, adaptability, and moral character that the program required. Today she stood in the auditorium of Central Valley High School in California, addressing an assembly of 300 students who had been selected for preliminary screening. Unlike her early days at Jefferson High, she no longer had to hide her true identity or experience. My name is Maya Chen, she began, her voice carrying easily through the large space. I'm 18 years old, I'm a veteran of the Dominion War, and I'm here to offer some of you the chance to prepare for a future that will be unlike anything your parents experienced. The auditorium was silent, even though news of the war had begun leaking to the public over the past month. Most teenagers were still processing the reality that their world had fundamentally changed. A student in the front row raised her hand. Ms. Chen, is it true that you were actually fighting aliens when you were our age? Yes, Maya replied simply. I was evacuated from Earth at 13 and spent 4 years with human resistance forces on colony worlds. I learned things that no teenager should have to learn, and I survived experiences that changed how I think about human potential. Another student called out, what was it like? Fighting in space? Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. Terrifying, exhausting, but also illuminating. War strips away all the comfortable illusions we have about ourselves and forces us to discover what we're really capable of. She looked across the sea of young faces. What I discovered is that humans are remarkably adaptable. We can learn alien technologies, we can survive in impossible conditions, and we can find hope even in the darkest circumstances. A boy near the back stood up. Why should we believe any of this? I mean, no offense, but this all sounds like science fiction. Maya nodded. Fair question. Here's what I can tell you that you can verify independently. Over the past 6 months, there have been dozens of technological breakthroughs announced by major corporations. New battery technologies, advanced materials, improved satellite communications. If you research the patents and scientific papers, you'll notice that these technologies are all based on principles that weren't in human scientific literature 2 years ago. She paused. Those aren't human innovations. They're reverse-engineered alien technology being slowly introduced to prevent economic disruption. A girl in the middle section raised her hand. So the war is really over? We're safe now. The immediate threat has been neutralized, Maya answered. The Dominion forces that invaded human space have retreated, but their empire is vast and we only encountered a small frontier section of their military. The question isn't whether they'll return, but when and in what force. The same girl followed up. Then why aren't we mobilizing the entire planet? Why aren't we building massive defense systems? Maya smiled grimly. Who says we're not? But military preparation is only part of the solution. The Dominion's greatest advantage was that they underestimated human adaptability. Our greatest strength isn't our weapons or our ships. It's our ability to learn, to innovate, to find solutions that no one else would think of. She gestured to the assembled students. The generation that fought the Dominion War proved that teenagers can be engineers, tacticians, leaders, and innovators when circumstances demand it. The question is whether you're willing to develop those capabilities now, before circumstances force you to. A student near the middle called out, "What exactly would we be learning? What's this program actually about?" Maya clicked a remote, and the large screen behind her displayed a presentation showing various project examples. Advanced problem solving using limited resources, emergency response and crisis management, accelerated learning techniques for technical subjects, leadership skills for high-stress situations, and yes, basic principles of alien technology and how to adapt it for human use. The auditorium erupted in excited conversation. Maya waited for quiet, then continued. But I need to be clear about something. This program isn't for everyone. We're looking for students who can handle advanced concepts, who can work well under pressure, who can be trusted with classified information, and who genuinely want to help prepare humanity for an uncertain future. A student near the front raised her hand. What about our parents? What about college applications? What about normal life? The program is designed to enhance your normal education, not replace it, Maya explained. Students in the program typically achieve higher test scores, better college admission rates, and stronger scholarship opportunities because they're learning advanced concepts and developing superior problem-solving skills. She paused. As for your parents, they'll be fully briefed on the program if you're selected. Many of them will learn about the Dominion War for the first time during that process. A boy in the back section stood up. Ms. Chen, are you asking us to become soldiers? Maya shook her head firmly. I'm asking you to become the kind of people who can rebuild civilization if necessary, who can innovate solutions to impossible problems, who can lead others through crisis situations, and who can adapt to challenges that haven't been invented yet. She looked directly at him. Some of you may choose military service eventually, but that's not the program's primary purpose. A girl near the front called out, How do we know if we're right for this program? Maya smiled. You ask yourself whether you're satisfied with the education you're receiving now, whether you feel like you're being prepared for the world you're actually going to inherit, whether you want to be someone who shapes the future, or someone who just reacts to it. She clicked to the next slide, showing statistics from the Jefferson High pilot program. Students in our pilot program show average improvement of 40% in standardized test scores, 60% in college admission rates, and 90% in leadership assessment scores. But more importantly, they report feeling more confident, more capable, and more optimistic about their futures. A student in the middle section raised her hand. What if we're not smart enough? What if we can't keep up? Intelligence isn't the limiting factor, Maya replied. Determination is. I've seen average students become exceptional when they're properly motivated and given the right tools. The program is designed to meet you where you are and help you reach your potential. She paused, looking across the auditorium. I need to tell you something else. In 4 years of combat, I learned that the most valuable people weren't necessarily the ones with the highest test scores. They were the ones who could stay calm under pressure, who could work with others, who could find creative solutions to unprecedented problems, and who never gave up even when everything seemed hopeless. A boy near the back called out, "When would the program start?" "Next month for selected students," Maya answered. The application process includes academic evaluation, psychological assessment, security screening, and personal interviews. We expect to select about 30 students from this school. The auditorium was buzzing with conversation as students processed this information. Maya held up her hand for attention. "I want to leave you with one final thought," she said. "Every generation faces challenges that the previous generation couldn't imagine. Your grandparents lived through World War II. Your parents navigated the early internet age. You're going to inherit a universe where humanity is no longer alone, where space travel is routine, and where the next major challenge might come from directions we haven't even considered yet." She paused. "The question is whether you want to face that future as someone who's prepared, or someone who's just hoping for the best." As the assembly concluded and students filed out of the auditorium, Maya noticed the conversations continuing in the hallways. Some students were excited, others skeptical, many simply overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they'd heard. Jessica, who had accompanied Maya to this school as her assistant coordinator, approached her. "How do you think it went?" Maya watched the stream of students leaving the auditorium, noting the ones who were walking with more purpose, the ones who were asking detailed questions, the ones who had that particular gleam in their eyes that indicated they were already imagining possibilities. "I think," Maya said, "we're going to have more qualified applicants than we can handle, and that's exactly the problem we want to have." Later that afternoon, Maya received a secure communication from General Morrison. The Dominion had been detected testing new long-range probe systems in the outer edges of human space. The timeline for their return might be shorter than anyone had hoped. The next generation of human defenders needed to be ready sooner than expected. 1 year after the first conference room meeting at Jefferson High, Maya stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Orbital Defense Training Facility, watching Earth turn slowly below. The facility, officially designated as an Advanced Educational Research Station, housed 300 of the most promising students from her program, now called the Human Adaptive Response Initiative. The students below her were conducting what appeared to be a complex engineering simulation. In reality, they were coordinating the deployment of Earth's new early warning satellite network, a system they had helped design, using principles learned from captured Dominion technology. "Contact. Approaching the outer sensor perimeter," announced Jennifer Walsh, now the program's senior communications coordinator. At 18, she had already mastered Dominion signal processing better than most adult technicians. Configuration matches Dominion probe design, but the approach vector is unusual. Maya moved to the central command station, where a mixed group of teenagers and military advisors were tracking the incoming object. "Define unusual, Jennifer." "It's transmitting," Jennifer replied, her voice tense with concentration. "Not standard Dominion probe protocols. It's trying to establish communication." Colonel Davis, now serving as the program's military liaison, frowned at the display. "Could be a trick. Dominion forces don't typically announce themselves." Maya studied the incoming data streams. "Alex, what's your assessment?" Alex Rodriguez, now the facility's chief technology officer, was working frantically at his console. "The signal structure is definitely Dominion technology, but the content is, I think it's a surrender offer." The command center fell silent. Marcus, who had become the program's strategic analysis coordinator, spoke up. "Maya, we need to inform Earth Command immediately." "Already done," Maya replied, her fingers flying over the communication controls. "But we need to maintain our monitoring protocols." This could still be a deception. On the main display, the probe continued its approach toward Earth. Its transmissions were becoming clearer as it came within range of the enhanced sensor arrays that Maya's students had helped deploy throughout the solar system. "I'm getting clearer readings on the message content," Jennifer announced. "It's requesting permission to approach Earth for diplomatic negotiations. They're asking for safe passage to discuss terms of formal peace." David Martinez, who had become the program's coordination chief, looked up from his station. "Maya, this changes everything." "If the Dominion wants to negotiate." Maya held up a hand for silence as her personal communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth Command. After reading it, she looked around at the assembled students and advisors. Earth Command is authorizing us to serve as the preliminary contact team, she announced. General Morrison wants our assessment of Dominion intentions before committing to formal diplomatic contact. Tyler, now specializing in xenoanalysis and communication protocols, raised his hand. Maya, what if this is exactly what it appears to be? What if they genuinely want peace? Maya thought about the years of war, the friends she'd lost, the colonies that had been destroyed. Then we find out what kind of peace they're offering, and whether it's one humanity can accept. Over the next several hours, Maya's team conducted the most important analysis of their young lives. They studied the probe's construction, analyzed its communication patterns, and evaluated the sincerity of its diplomatic overtures, using techniques they'd learned from both human intelligence services and captured Dominion databases. Sarah Kim, now the program's chief analyst, compiled the final report. The probe appears to be genuine. The Dominion envoys are requesting a formal meeting to discuss territorial boundaries, technology exchange agreements, and mutual non-aggression treaties. What's the catch? Jessica asked from her position as senior investigator. There's always a catch with the Dominion. Maya reviewed the data one more time. The catch is that they're not negotiating from a position of strength. Our intelligence suggests that the Dominion Empire is facing pressure from other alien species in distant sectors. They can't afford a prolonged conflict with humanity while fighting battles on multiple fronts. Colonel Davis nodded grimly. So they want to secure this frontier so they can focus their resources elsewhere. Exactly, Maya confirmed. Which means this is our opportunity to negotiate from a position of relative strength. Dr. Henderson, who had become a strong supporter of the program and was now serving as its educational oversight coordinator, raised an important question. What role do you see your students playing in these negotiations? Maya looked around at the young people who had transformed from curious teenagers into capable analysts, engineers, and strategists. I think, she said slowly, that the generation that fought this war should have a voice in how it ends. 6 weeks later, Maya found herself in the most surreal situation of her life, sitting across a conference table from actual Dominion representatives in the first formal diplomatic meeting between their species. The meeting was taking place aboard a neutral station constructed specifically for these negotiations, located at the edge of the solar system. The Dominion envoys were not what she had expected. Instead of the imposing warriors she'd fought during the war, these were clearly diplomats, smaller, more intellectual-looking beings with elaborate ceremonial markings that indicated their non-military status. Through translation devices that her students had helped design, the lead Dominion envoy addressed the human delegation. We acknowledge that our initial assessment of human capabilities was significantly flawed. Your species has demonstrated adaptability and innovation that exceeds our previous experience with other races. General Morrison, leading the human delegation, replied carefully, We appreciate your acknowledgement. However, the cost of your miscalculation was considerable. Millions of human lives were lost. The Dominion envoy's response surprised everyone. We acknowledge the death debt. Dominion honor requires appropriate compensation for civilian casualties inflicted through erroneous military action. Maya leaned forward. With permission from General Morrison, she had been designated as the Human Youth Representative, a role that the Dominion delegation had specifically requested after learning about the age demographics of human resistance. Fighters, what form would this compensation take? Maya asked. Technology transfer, medical knowledge, resource sharing, educational exchange. The envoy paused. The Dominion Empire has much to offer a species that proved capable of adapting our technology for their own purposes. Over the following days, Maya found herself playing a crucial role in negotiations that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. Her unique combination of combat experience, technological knowledge, and youthful perspective proved invaluable in bridging the gap between human and Dominion thinking. The final agreement, signed 3 months later, established humanity as a recognized independent power with territorial rights to all star systems within 50 light-years of Earth. More importantly, it included provisions for technology sharing, peaceful exploration protocols, and educational exchanges that would benefit both species. But perhaps the most significant outcome was the establishment of the Interspecies Youth Development Program, based directly on Maya's model. Young people from both human and Dominion worlds would participate in educational exchanges designed to prevent the kind of misunderstandings that had led to war. Standing once again on the observation deck of the orbital facility, now expanded and renamed the Interspecies Education Center, Maya watched as the first group of Dominion student visitors approached in their distinctively designed transport ships. Jessica joined her at the viewing window. Did you ever imagine it would end this way? When you were sitting alone in that high school cafeteria, trying to figure out how to be normal? Maya smiled, thinking about the journey from that isolated teenager carrying impossible secrets to this moment of hope and possibility. I imagined a lot of different endings. Most of them involved more fighting. Do you think it's really over? Jessica asked. The conflict, I mean? Maya considered the question. This phase is over. But the universe is a big place, and humanity is still very young by galactic standards. There will be other challenges, other conflicts, other opportunities to prove what we're capable of. She turned away from the window to look at the control center, where her former students were now, training a new generation of young people, both human and Dominion, in the skills they would need for an interstellar future. But I think we've learned the most important lesson, Maya continued. The future belongs to people who are prepared for it. And preparing for the future means being willing to grow, to learn, to adapt, and to work together even with people who used to be enemies. Below them, human and Dominion teenagers were collaborating on a project to design improved life support systems for long-range exploration vessels. They were laughing together as they worked, completely comfortable with the kind of interspecies cooperation that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier.